The day my husband died, I was holding his hand. My in-laws were holding champagne glasses. I didn't know that yet. I found out 3 weeks later when my sister-in-law accidentally sent me a photo meant for their family group chat. Timestamp: 4:37 p.m., the exact minute the hospital monitors flatlined. There they were, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and my brother-in-law, sitting around a restaurant table with sparkling wine, smiling for the camera. My husband's name was Daniel. He was 34 years old. We had been married for 6 years. And while I was pressing my forehead against his hand and telling him it was okay to let go, his family was already letting go of something else entirely. Any pretense that they had ever considered me one of them. I need to back up. Daniel and I met in our late 20s at a work conference in Denver that neither of us wanted to attend. We bonded over bad coffee and a presentation about quarterly projections that made both of us want to disappear. He was kind in a way that felt rare. Not performed, not strategic, just genuinely, quietly kind. He called his grandmother every Sunday. He tipped 25% without making a show of it. When I told him on our third date that I had student loans that felt like a second mortgage, he didn't flinch. He said, "We'll figure it out." And then, over the next 6 years, we did. His family was a different story. His mother, I'll call her Margaret, had a particular talent for making you feel like a guest in your own life. She had opinions about everything. The way I decorated our apartment, the fact that I kept my last name professionally, the holiday traditions I brought from my own family that she considered a little much. She never said anything directly cruel. It was always wrapped. A comment about how she just wanted what was best for Daniel. A concerned question about whether I was sure I wanted to take on that career opportunity since it would mean less time at home. A gentle suggestion that maybe we should spend Christmas at her house again this year, since she just felt the family was drifting a little. Daniel saw it. He wasn't blind, but she was his mother, and he had spent 34 years learning to navigate her in a specific way, with patience, with partial agreements, with careful redirection. He used to tell me, "She loves in the only language she knows. It's just not a great language." I understood. I didn't always have grace for it, but I understood. His brother Marcus was simpler. Marcus wanted money. He'd wanted money his entire adult life and had never found a sustainable way to generate it himself, so he orbited people who had it. He had borrowed from Daniel twice in the 3 years I knew them. Once for a business venture that evaporated in 8 months. Once for an opportunity. He was vague about that. I suspected was neither legal nor wise. Daniel gave it both times. He never asked to be paid back out loud. But I saw the spreadsheet he kept. He was meticulous about things like that. He tracked everything. When Daniel got his diagnosis, Stage 3, aggressive, moving fast, the first thing Marcus said in a phone call I was not supposed to hear was, "What does this mean for the house?" Not the Daniel. Not my brother. The house. I stood in our kitchen with a dish towel in my hand, and I heard that sentence, and something went very still inside me. Daniel had a life insurance policy. We had taken it out together 4 years earlier. Sensible and unsexy. The kind of adult decision you make and then don't think about again. The policy was for $800,000. I was the sole beneficiary. We had also purchased our home together, a modest 3-bedroom in a suburb outside Columbus that we had spent 2 years making feel like ours. A garden Daniel started in the backyard. A reading nook I built into the hallway closet. A kitchen we renovated ourselves over one catastrophic and hilarious summer. The house was ours. The policy was for me. None of that stopped Margaret from having ideas. She waited 6 days after Daniel's death. 6 days. Then she sat across from me at my own kitchen table with a printed document. I still don't know who helped her make it, and she explained with the particular gentleness of someone who knows exactly how sharp they are being, that she and my father-in-law had discussed it, and they felt it would make the most sense, emotionally and logistically, for me to use the insurance money to buy out Daniel's share of the house, and give that amount to the family. Since, she said, the house had really been a joint investment and Daniel's contribution deserved to be honored. I looked at the document. I looked at her. I said, "I'll need to talk to a lawyer." She nodded like that was the expected first step in an agreed-upon process. It was not. What followed over the next 2 months was a sustained, coordinated campaign that I can only describe as a pressure system. Margaret called me every 3 days, sometimes more. The conversations always started soft. How was I eating? Was I sleeping? Did I need anything? And then drifted, inevitably, toward the money. She began referencing Daniel's wishes. She said he had told her, before he got sick, that he always intended for the family to be taken care of. She said he would have wanted this. She said she knew her son. Marcus texted me links, real estate listings in my neighborhood, as if to demonstrate what the house was worth. comparable life insurance settlements from what I can only assume were litigation websites. Once, at 11 at night, a link to an article about the emotional burden of widowhood and the benefits of financial simplicity. I stared at my phone screen in the dark, and I thought, he thinks this is persuasion. My father-in-law, Gerald, said almost nothing throughout all of this. He sat in the background of every conversation like furniture. But once, when I called to check in on Margaret during a week when I was still trying to be decent about things, he got on the phone and said, "Sweetheart, we just don't want there to be bad blood." And I realized that was the threat, dressed as a concern. We don't want bad blood, meaning, we will create it if you don't cooperate. I went to a lawyer. Her name was Patricia, and she had the kind of office that is deliberately unintimidating. Plants everywhere, good lighting, a box of tissues on the corner of the desk that I ended up using. She listened to everything I told her. She looked at the insurance policy. She looked at the insurance policy. She looked at the house deed. She looked at the printed document Margaret had brought to my kitchen. She put it down and said, "None of this has any legal standing." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in 2 months. She also said something else. She said, "Document everything from here forward. Every call, every text, every visit. Don't delete anything. If they're willing to do this 6 days after his death, they may be willing to do more." I drove home and I sat in the reading nook I had built into the hallway closet, and I thought about Daniel. I thought about the spreadsheet he kept. I thought about how he had tracked the loans to Marcus with quiet, careful precision, never confronting it, just noting it. I thought about the way he loved his family even when they made it difficult. I thought about what he had said to me in the hospital, near the end, one of the last coherent conversations we had. He had looked at me and said, "Don't let them make you small. You have never been small." I got up and I started taking notes. Every call was documented with date, time, and a written summary immediately after. I enabled automatic cloud backup on my phone, so the texts were preserved off-site. I bought a small notebook, paper, analog, nothing that could be remotely accessed, and I kept it in my nightstand. I was not angry when I did this. I want to be clear about that. I was not in revenge mode, I was in protect mode. There's a difference, and it matters. The calls continued, the texts continued. Then in the 3rd month, Margaret added a new element. She started calling my mother. I found out when my mother called me, confused and a little frightened, saying that Margaret had reached out to tell her she was worried about my mental health in the wake of Daniel's death, that I wasn't processing grief appropriately, that I had become hostile and isolated, and she was concerned I was making irrational financial decisions from a place of instability. I sat with that for a long moment. Then I called Patricia. Patricia said, "This is actually useful. It establishes a pattern of behavior that goes beyond financial pressure into potential harassment and defamation. Keep documenting. And I want you to do something specific for me. I want you to send Margaret a written message, nothing hostile, simply stating that all future communications regarding the estate should go through your attorney. Politely, in writing." I sent the message that evening. Short, professional, no room for interpretation. All further estate communications to go through Patricia. Margaret called me 4 times the next day. I didn't answer. I forwarded the call log to Patricia. Marcus texted me that I was being cold and that the family was just grieving too, and that it was really sad to see me turning this into something adversarial. I read the message. I did not respond. I screenshotted it and sent it to Patricia. Gerald left a voicemail saying they just wanted to talk, that there were things I didn't understand about Daniel's wishes, that he had made promises before he got sick that I might not be aware of. That one made me pause. Not because I believed him, but because I needed to be certain. I went back through everything Daniel had ever written. Emails, text threads, the Notes app on his old iPad that I hadn't been able to open for weeks because it felt too intimate. I sat with the iPad for a long time before I turned it on. And when I did, I read through everything. Grocery lists, reminders to call the dentist, a running list of movies he wanted to watch that we never got to, a note he had started and never finished titled "Things I Want for Us" that I had to close after the first line because I wasn't ready, and a separate note titled with Marcus's name that was a detailed record of every financial exchange between them. Amounts, dates, the conversations that preceded each transaction. The final entry was dated 14 months before Daniel died. It said, "I have decided not to lend him anything further. He knows why. If anything happens to me, this money was never a gift. It was never to be repaid to the family. This was personal between us, and I want the record to be clear." I photographed every page of that note. I sent it to Patricia. 3 weeks later, Patricia sent a formal letter to Margaret, Gerald, and Marcus outlining the legal status of the insurance policy. the property deed, and Daniel's documented financial records. The letter stated clearly and without hostility that there were no outstanding obligations from his estate to any family member, that the beneficiary designations were legally binding, that all communications had been preserved and documented, and that any further attempts to contact me regarding financial matters outside of legal counsel would be treated as harassment. I was not there when they received it. I don't know exactly what happened in that house. I imagine there was noise. I know there was a period of silence, about 11 days, during which no one from his family contacted me at all. Then Margaret called one last time. I answered. I don't entirely know why. Maybe I wanted to hear what she would say when everything had been removed. She said, "Daniel would be ashamed of you." I thought about the reading nook. I thought about the garden. I thought about the spreadsheet. I thought about what he had said in the hospital. I said, "I know my husband." And I hung up. I have not spoken to any of them since. Here's what I did with the insurance money. A portion went into a fund for my own stability, mortgage security, an emergency reserve, the financial floor that Daniel and I had always been building toward. A portion went to clear the remaining student debt he had quietly been helping me manage, the one we had said we'd figure out together, which we did, just not in the way either of us imagined. And a portion, a meaningful portion, went to establish a small annual scholarship through a nonprofit in Columbus that supports adults going back to school after medical crises. Daniel had spent time in the infusion center every week for 8 months. He had met people there who had paused entire lives, careers, degrees, plans to get through treatment. He used to come home and talk about them. A woman in her 30s who had been 1 semester from finishing her nursing degree. A man who had taken a leave from the community college where he was teaching while he got through surgery. He used to say, "They just need a little time. They just need someone to hold the door open." The scholarship is in his name. I think about Margaret saying he would be ashamed of me. I think about it, and then I think about the garden he planted in the backyard, which bloomed last spring for the first time without him here to see it. I went outside and I stood in it for a long time. The tomatoes came in. The herbs he started from seed. The roses along the back fence that he had told me took 3 years to establish properly. He built things meant to last. So did I. There is a version of this story where I talk about how broken I was, and I was broken. I want to be honest about that. Grief at 32 is not what anyone tells you it will be. It is not a clean arc. It doesn't move in stages the way the pamphlets suggest. It moves in ambushes. A Tuesday afternoon, a specific song, the way the light comes through the kitchen window at 5 in November. I was broken in the particular way that happens when you lose someone who was also your infrastructure, your co-architect, your person who knew how all the systems worked. But broken does not mean available. And it does not mean without memory. I remembered everything Daniel had built. I protected it. I kept the record. I made sure that what he left behind went where he would have wanted it to go, not where grief predators assumed they could redirect it. His family wanted me to believe that honoring him meant handing them something. I came to understand, slowly and then all at once, that honoring him meant doing exactly what he did with every hard thing in his life. Quiet, documented, methodical, and never ever small. I still sleep on my side of the bed. I still make 2 cups of coffee some mornings before I remember. I still reach for my phone to text him something funny before catching myself. But when I walk past the reading nook, I don't feel loss. I feel like I kept a promise. That's the whole story. If any part of this sounds familiar, if you have people in your life who treat your grief as an opportunity, who wrap their demands in the language of concern, who call your strength instability and your boundaries hostility, I want you to hear this. Document everything. Find your Patricia. Know what your person actually wanted, not what someone claims he wanted. And do not let anyone make you small. You are not small. If this reached you today, leave a comment. I read every single one, and if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. You never know who's sitting in their own reading nook right now, trying to figure out what comes next.